Welcome to International Talks. Today we are going to talk about one of the most politicized topics of nowadays, the global warming. As we know, according to the official sources, the humans, we are basically responsible for 1 degree warming of the planet. Global warming is likely to reach 1.5 degrees between 2030 and 2050, according to the International Panel on Climate Change. We observe the highest level of CO2 concentration in atmosphere. Currently, the CO2 level is 420 ppm and rising every year. These historic phenomena have not been observed since 1950s for hundreds of years. The main reason of such a high CO2 levels is the industrial and the fossil fuels production that we use every day. For example, the coal sector, the vehicles that we drive every day, which are now more than 1 billion, the oil and gas sector, and other industrial sectors that are producing high levels of CO2. Annual global emission of CO2 exceeded 400 billion metric tons in 2019, including fossil fuels and the land use emissions. CO2 is one of the main drivers of the greenhouse effect. If at the local level it helps small farms to grow agricultural production, at the global level it causes warming, and melting of the glaciers causes the sea level rises, which is a direct threat to small island nations in first place. According to studies, by 2100 we could observe the increase of the sea levels over 15 inches. In addition to the ocean acidification, because the oceans are the main factors which absorb the CO2s, the acid levels in the oceans could rise as well, which is a direct threat to the ocean environment. Almost half of the CO2 emissions are by 3 countries: China, United States, and India. These countries have to implement the long-term policy to reduce the CO2 levels drastically. Whilst high levels of industrialization is good for the economy, its side effects can cause serious problems. For example, over 50,000 people died due to the smoke and air pollution in Beijing and Shanghai. At some point, the air quality in these cities was so bad that China literally had to buy the bottled oxygen from Canada and disperse it in these cities. The solution to this problem seems very easy. Just install the renewable energy sources like wind turbines, the solar panels, and the biogas factories, and you will have solved the problem. However, this is not as easy as it seems. Deforestation is also a serious problem. We're using millions of hectares of forest every year, and even the rate of deforestation decreased significantly in the last decade. Since 1990s, we have lost more than 80 million hectares of natural forest. Large-scale commercial agriculture accounted for more than 40% of tropical forest deforestation in 2000 and 2010. We also must emphasize that the subject of climate change is very politicized. For example, Donald Trump withdrew US from the Paris Climate Accord. Many politicians have tried to make their whole career based on this subject. People like Al Gore have been pushing climate change agenda since 1990s and basically have been saying everything same all over again. However, this is not the main problem. The main problem is hysteria around the climate change.
How dare you!
Many people are just trying to bandwagon on this subject and push their narrative about the climate change.
Simply because, you see, the useful idiots,
basically without any scientific basics on the issue. We should note that the picture is not as dramatic. In 2019, the share of the renewable energy in primary energy was over 5%. The subsidies by the government exceeded $120 billion, which is multiple times more than fossil fuel subsidies. The projections look also very optimistic. By 2050, in China, US, India, and EU, the renewable energy will be almost half of the energy supplies. Apart from excluding all the hysteria on this subject, we should also exclude the ideas of the people who completely neglect the side effects of the CO2 emissions.
Carbon!
Listen.
Yeah! Team Carbon! Carbon!
We also always should remember that the nature is all about the balance, and we should not take into account the ideas of the people who share the hysteria, because these people are basically used to push their narratives. What we need is to be measured in our judgments, follow the scientific evidence, and be somewhere in the middle in this climate change debate.
I am somewhere in the middle.
The main reason why climate change radicals are so popular in media and internet is that because the scientific debate on the subject seems to be boring, and people are not attracted by the debate of the actual scientists who can provide the actual data on the subject. It is absolutely crucial to have high-level spendings on low-carbon technologies and renewables. In 2019, the government spending on the renewables across the global world was around $30 billion, and we should hope that this number increases. Venture capital investments are also very important for the development of the energy technology. Private sector fundings of the energy technology looks also promising. In 2019, it accounted for $90 billion and growing every year. The reason why venture capital and private sector should increase their spending on the energy sector is because private companies are much better at developing technologies. For example, Amazon. Why it is a leading company in the world? Because it spends a huge amount of money on research and development every year, thus increasing its capacity and technological novelties. We should also welcome President Biden's plan to increase spendings on research and developments in energy sector. According to his newest plan, United States should take the position of the leader in climate change issue and will spend over $35 billion in research and development in energy sector. Now, if you're still not convinced and think that humanity should not spend so much money on climate change issues, think about the product that you like the most, the chocolate. Because there are not so many cocoa exporters in the world, and 3 or 4 countries are accounted for more than 50% of the export of the product. High temperatures and climate change would force the farmers to move their farms up hills, which will cause the disruption of the cocoa export. Thus, by 2050, we may have the chocolate shortage in the world. In addition to that, deforestation is also a very significant threat to the cocoa export. And at the end of the day, the consumer will have to pay the premium price for the chocolate, which is very unfortunate for all of us. Climate change and high temperatures can cause mass migration. If we take into account the recent history of 2015 migration into the European Union, which was a catastrophic disaster for the Union, we can clearly say that the world is not ready for such kind of migrations. If we follow to physicist Nikolai Kardashev's theory, there are 3 main civilizations according to energy consumption. We are at the phase 1. However, this means that climate change and the energy consumption is a long-term process. And at the end of the day, we should pay more attention to it now than regret it at the end. Thank you for watching. I hope you liked the video. Until next time.